Our lectionary reading this week is from the Gospel of Mark and includes two of Jesus' parables. We read from Mark chapter 4, verses 26 to 34. He also said, "The kingdom of God is as if someone would scatter seed on the ground and would sleep and rise night and day, and the seed would sprout and grow. He does not know how. The earth produces of itself first the stalk, then the head, then the full grain in the head. But when the grain is ripe, at once he goes in with his sickle because the harvest has come." He also said, "With what can we compare the kingdom of God? Or what parable will we use for it? It is like a mustard seed, which when sown upon the ground is the smallest of all the seeds on earth. Yet when it is sown, it grows up and becomes the greatest of all shrubs and puts forth large branches so that the birds of the air can make nests in its shade." With many such parables he spoke the word to them as they were able to hear it. He did not to speak to them except in parables, but he explained everything in private to his disciples. The challenge of these parables is that the simple analogies that are used lure us into thinking that there might be a simple interpretation of the passage. A gardener or farmer sleeps through the sprouting and growing of the seed, but then wakes in time for the harvest. A tiny little mustard seed grows up into a giant bush, so large that birds can nest in it. What are we to make of these simple analogies, and what do they tell us about the kingdom of God? It is helpful, I think, in interpreting this passage to read ahead to the next passage where Jesus and the disciples are out in a boat on the Galilee and the disciples fall asleep. Notice the parallel to the sleeping gardener or farmer. And then the disciples are awakened by a storm and they become very afraid of what is going on. But Jesus chastises them for their lack of faith. Perhaps then, what this passage is trying to tell us is that the kingdom of God, the reign of Christ, is not in our hands, but in God's. We ought to trust that God can bring about God's purposes in history, and simply we just do our part. And we need to always remain prepared for the harvest. Last year at Reunion, we had Messy Church, and good news, by the way, we're having Messy Church again this year at Reunion. I hope you're coming. I attended, and I got to plant a succulent plant, and I have pretty much left it alone, just giving it a little water occasionally. And guess what? It's doing just fine. I usually manage to destroy almost anything green that I try to grow in terms of house plants and that kind of thing. But these succulents have just been really good. Sometimes we fret over the fact that our church is too small, or that we are too old, or that our building is too expensive. Perhaps we just need to remain alert for the harvest. What opportunities is God giving you to engage in the mission of the kingdom of God and to become a part of the harvest and indeed one of the harvesters?